Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. So the last time we did al-hadath al-asghar or akbar. Yeah, al-hadath al-akbar. So inshallah today ad-dima al-kharija min farj al-mar'a. So the blood that comes out of the women's private. So there's four classifications. Al-hayd is menses itself. Nifas is postpartum. Istihada is basically pseudo menstruation, or sometimes you have extra blood after the 40 days, or extra blood that comes out after the women's weekly cycles, or where sometimes you're not able to differentiate between what sort of blood it is. Damul fasad is accidental bleeding. So we'll go into every single one of these scenarios, inshallah. Okay. Al-hayd. Al-hayd, as we mentioned, it is menses. Sinnuhu tis'a sinin ila khamsin. So what is the bare minimum age for, I can keep talking. What is the bare minimum age when it comes to menses? Obviously, this is a Hanbali position, which we have here is 7. So 7 is the bare minimum age when it comes to your menses. The second, when it comes to max, it would considered 50. So generally, how do you know if what is a sign of like puberty? Is somebody hits when they get their menses? For sure, they've hit their puberty. Muddatuhu is basically, so one is the bare minimum and the maximum. So 7 to 50. Muddatuhu yawm wa layla is basically a day and a night. The Hanafis will call it 3 days. The Malikis will say, as long as the blood the gushes of blood would be considered menses. So let's say from a Hanbali position, 1 day, 1 night is bare minimum, and the max they go is 15 days. But typically, ghalibuhu is 6 or 7 days. So usually it's 6 or 7. Al-ada, the normal, or the max, it can go up to 15. Yawm wa layla is basically a day and night, as you see on the screen. Okay. All right, inshallah. The next one, inshallah, ma yatarattabu alay. So what happens when somebody is having their menses? Suqutu salah, the person is not commanded to pray. كنا نحيض في عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كما قالت Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentions we used to actually have our menses at the time of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. ونؤمر بالصلاة, we were commanded to I mean نؤمر بالصوم بقضاء الصوم. They were commanded to basically, qada is what's like the best translation, when you have to compensate for what you missed, but you are not supposed to do so when it comes to your salah. So any salah that you missed during your menses, you will not pray, but any fasting you missed, you will compensate. So the only ones that actually used to follow the opinion that you have to even compensate the salah was the Khawarij. This is one of their positions, that no, you have to compensate for the salah also, the first one. Suqut, as you mentioned here, suqut ada'u sawm, basically stoppage of the fasting, but you have to compensate the fasting. Thubutul bulugh, once somebody hits they have their monthly cycle, obviously it's affirmation of their puberty. Tahrimul wat is you are not allowed to have intercourse with somebody who's having their menses. So you're allowed to do everything illa an nikah, as the Prophet ﷺ said, except the nikah, referring to basically the action of intercourse itself. So you're allowed to do everything else other than the action of the intercourse. Tahrimu dukhul al-masjid, she is prohibited from entering the masjid. I think I mentioned this last time, is if let's say in a lot of the Western countries, typically it's like an Islamic center. So the prayer hall is what you will not go into. And this is a position of all the madhahib generally, that this is, you'll always find, obviously, scholars who will deviate from maybe the four madhahib, but generally the scholars, they will tell you not to enter the prayer area if she's in her menses, her monthly cycle. Tahrimu qira'at al-Quran, this is again one of the Hanbali positions, is that she's not supposed to recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Hanafis and the Hanbalis will allow you to, I think you asked this question last time, they will allow you to touch the mushaf, if she or he is wearing a gloves. I mean, she in this case. So what is the minimum duration of her purity? أقلها is 13 days. أكثرها, the max is no had, because sometimes a woman may not have her monthly cycle for a very long time. And obviously this may be a sickness, so there's no had itself. But the least she's going to be pure for is 13 days. غالبها بقية الشهر. يعني let's say she was impure for, let's say, 7 days, and the rest of the month she's going to be pure, i.e., let's say 7 days, the next 22 days or 29 days, she's 23 days or 22 days, she's going to be pure. So whatever is remaining from the month, she's going to be pure. The next one,
for the recitation, if she memorizes, that she could do that.
Yeah, typically this is like I said, this is more of the mu'tamad. Other scholars are not so strict on her reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the mu'tamad itself, they're pretty strict on the reciting of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll try to read up if there's other madhahib that actually was lenient on this, or any famous scholar who took this position, if she's allowed to recite the Quran. Dhikr generally is allowed. I know the small dhikr that you make, let's say going somewhere, starting something, all that is, you're talking about continuous recitation. This is where usually the Mu'tamad itself, Imam Ahmad itself took the position that she should not recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Touching the Mus'haf itself, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. We did this last time. Even for a person who is of minor impurity, a man is not supposed to touch the Mus'haf. There are scholars who allowed it, but generally they use the ayah. The ones who allowed it, they will tell you this ayah is referring to the malaika, the angels, are not referring to obviously Bani Adam, the son of Adam itself. So this is typically the positions when it comes to recitation for somebody in menses, and recitation or touching the Mus'haf when somebody is in the state of minor impurity. There is one position in the Shafi'i school that they will tell you if somebody's in like illa abiri sabil, if somebody's passing through the masjid, typically, and especially nowadays, you have to come to the masjid. You don't really pass through. I think in Egypt it's definitely possible. I've seen you can walk through the masjid, but here or in most of the centers, you have to actually come in. And I say come in, like you have to come inside the prayer area itself. Nifas, ahkam al-hayd. Nifas is obviously postpartum. It takes the ruling of hayd, i.e., dropping of salah, dropping of fasting, no intercourse, so you cannot enter the masjid, so you cannot recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Muddatuha. So أكثره 40 يوم. The max is going to be 40 days. Remember, the minimum is لا حد لأقله, i.e., if she stops bleeding, she should make ghusl and she should start praying. Whenever her bleeding stops, the Hanafi position is 40 days, by the way. But generally, the scholars will tell you is that as soon as, or at least the Hanbali scholars will tell you, as soon as she stops bleeding, she should make ghusl and start her, let's say, prayer or whatever she has to go back to. So hayd, the max, if somebody's bleeding, the max is 40 days. And then, like I mentioned, anybody who has problem, any of these problems, either be with urination or be with these kind of monthly cycles, when they know they're bleeding throughout the month or like for a long time, then in that case, they know they can start doing wudu for every salah itself. This is obviously the exception, but not the norm. Like if somebody's, not having any of these problems, they'll just go back to, if they stop bleeding, then they will just do ghusl and then go back to praying and doing their fasting. So one of the things, damul fasad, damul hamil, the blood of pregnancy, when it comes to insulin bleeding, damul saghira, if a girl who hasn't hit puberty, for example, if she bleeds, we mentioned about the minimum, right? So one of the signs of puberty is she basically has her menses. But I mentioned 1 day and 1 night. So if she's somebody younger, and if it was less than 1 day or 1 night, they would call it damul fasad. Basically, it's incidental bleeding. But like as I mentioned, Imam Malik position is the gushing of blood. But we obviously will cover how do you differentiate when I know none of this might apply to any of the men here, but Inshallah, if you have family or anything, this can be one of the. So as I mentioned here, ما نقص عن يوم وليلة. For anything that would consider incidental bleeding, less than a day and night, which is not the position of the Maliki school, which is the gushing of blood. Dr. Hatim actually mentioned from a doctor perspective, he was saying that the Maliki school position from a medical perspective might be stronger. Obviously, there is no particular narration that talk, but he was saying from a medical perspective, the Maliki school might be stronger. This was one of his comments that I read in this book. Al-Mustahada. So basically, when a female is going through, and like I mentioned, she's still bleeding after her normal 6-7 days, right? What is she used to? Tajlisu ala adatiha. She usually goes back to what is her norm. If her norm is 6 or 7 days, is what she will assume. But what she'll have to do is al-mumayyiza. She should be able to distinguish between her bleeding that her monthly cycle is and the bleeding that is not from her monthly cycle. If she's not able to differentiate between her monthly cycle and if it is actually something else, then most of the time it's hayd. Remember, the max you can take is 15. That's the Hanbali position. So let's say she thinks it is menstruation cycle for 15 days. And after 15 days, she's still bleeding, then you will go back to praying. So let's say you will have to do that means you'll have, if she's still bleeding, she'll have to do wudu for every salah, somebody who has this sort of problem. This happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So there, the Prophet ﷺ had commanded this lady to make wudu for every salah. That's how they get the ruling, even for somebody with such sort of problems. Anybody who has these kind of medical conditions, they will do wudu for every salah. This is one of the positions. That's the max in the Hanbali position. So let's say she will go to her ada, that is her habit. She knows it's 6-7 days. She's still bleeding, but she doesn't know, she's not able to differentiate. So she will assume it's her menses. But the max is 15 days. And then after that, she will continue praying. And remember, sometimes you may not have a cycle for a very long time. And this may be sickness, maybe she's pregnant, you don't know. So then obviously that's why they never give you like what's the maximum number of days for non-menstrual. Like there's no limit to it. We can't really give you a number. Okay, now the last part, inshallah, this is the most important thing, and this is one of the last things of the chapter, and then we'll do a review today, inshallah. I know this chapter, and especially when it comes to cycle, usually I've noticed people tend to sleep, but I'll catch you guys. At-tahara min al-najas and najasat. So this is important for us. So purification from any sort of impurity. So the first hadith, one of the first things we mentioned, miftah salat tuhur, the key to prayer is purification. Tahrimuha at-takbir, wa tahliluha at-taslim. Once you say Allahu Akbar, everything becomes prohibited. Once you say Assalamu alaikum, in that case, again, everything that was haram during the salah becomes permissible. So what is considered impure is something you have to understand. Al-bawl wal-ghaid min ghayri ma'kul. So urine and feces from non-edible animals. So for example, any sort of, let's say cow is something you eat. So the urines of the cow and the feces, this would not be considered impure for us. I know you might be pretty shocked. By the way, if somebody was working in the farm, but this is more of a rukhsa, if somebody was working in the farm, and back then most people did work in these kind of conditions, you will be washing yourself quite a bit. So, and anything ma fawqa al-hirra min ghayri ma'kul. So let's say if something is bigger than the size of a cat, and if it's not something you eat, then the urine of that and the feces of that would be impure. So smaller than that, no, it would not be considered impure. And anything that you eat, i.e. cow, goat, all of these things, the bowl, the urination and the feces of that is not considered impure. You look pretty surprised. Al-mayyita. Yeah. Al-mayyita illa, so anything that is dead is considered najasa, except the son of Adam. The son of Adam will not be considered impure. Anything that is dead, any of the animals that is dead, would be considered mayyit. It would be considered impure.
So When you said impure, you're talking about like you can't touch it and spray or what?
So I'm talking about any, and if it's feces or any of the blood, it would be impure. Remember, anything that is dry, typically, it's okay. We mentioned that anything that, so even if a dog, for example, if it's dry, so even if you took the most strictest position that the dog itself is impure, if it's a dry dog, the impurity does not transfer from one body to another. Let's say it was raining and you took the most strictest position that the dog itself is impure, and it did the shake in front of you, then you have najasa on you. So hopefully that give you an idea of.
Most of the time they lick, right?
Yes,
That's a problem.
that is where unless and until you're the most flexible Maliki, only then you would not consider the dog impure.
Sorry.
Yeah. What was your question?
I don't know.
So the hadith itself, why they use this is because, so what the hadith indicates is that إذا ولغ الكلب في إناء أحدكم, if the dog licks the vessel of one of you, فليغسله سبعا أوله تراب بالتراب, so let him wash 7 times, and the first is with soil, or like with soil. So because of this, some scholars said it is that the basically the tongue, the saliva, and the surrounding areas, obviously. And the most lenient position, or the Maliki position, they say that there is no direct prohibition indicating this is a big debate, but like I said, the most lenient opinion are actually the Malikis. And the Hanbalis are pretty strict when it comes to dogs. They would consider it impure.
When there is no direct report, what do they mean?
Direct report in terms of saying that the dog is impure.
It's saliva.
No, they don't even they don't consider it impure. They will tell you should wash it 7 times, but it's not something you have to do. It's a weird. I have never understood the Maliki position on this, but the hadith itself tells us to wash 7 plus 1, which will be totally 8 if you were to include the. If you al-khamr, this is not referring to the perfume. There's a big confusion. Whenever they say khamr, this is obviously ikhtilaf among the scholars. Is khamr, which is alcohol, ethanol, is it considered impure or not? The Hanbalis, I'm talking about the one that we drink, like what the people drink would be considered impure. What the humans drink in general would be considered impure. But the perfumes, no. It would not be. It's not something mashroob. It's not something that you drink. Nobody opens up a perfume bottle. So something that is.
Cannot do too many things.
But I think that
Yes,
they don't
they won't use it.
do that at all.
Yes, this because they in al-khamra wal maisir and rijzum min amal shaitan. They use the ayah that khamr. So if you look at the tafsir of this ayah, in al-khamra wal maisir wal amal shaitan, so they use, it talks about gambling and all of these qualities that is mentioned in the Quran. They consider what is the meaning of rijz and all. It's a very, very detailed topic. But the Hanbalis, the way they understand the concept of khamr itself, is the one that actually intoxicates you, something that is basically you drink khamr, ethanol itself. So obviously perfume is not something you drink. This is, I was even looking at a modern scholars commentary on this, especially when it comes to perfumes. They are a lot more lenient compared to some of, so there are scholars who have taken it, let's say even among the Salafi scholars, who took the position that just use atr, like a regular perfume and not. But even the ones who teach at Medina, like Amir Bahjat, who wrote this very book, his position is that it's not something that's mashroob, it's not something you drink, so it is not a problem. And this is even if you find Mufti Menk, I found one video of his way back. This is also his position, if you like him.
That you a little bit of alcohol, any form, it's not impure.
You're talking about like alcohol that is shrunk by people.
Maybe I misheard, but like someone that I had said that if you eat a little bit of alcohol, in any form.
See, so when it comes to alcohol, if you're talking about perfume itself, like I said, the Hanbalis don't have this position that it is impure.
Is that across the board or just?
And the Hanafis are the most strictest on this one when it comes to alcohol. Yeah, they don't like to use the regular perfume. Yeah.
So even like rubbing alcohol and stuff, like just
When you say alcohol, you mean like perfume?
rubbing alcohol, like when you have a cut for medical purposes.
Oh, listen, the Hanbalis and all, when it comes to these things, they're like super flexible.
Okay.
But the thing is, when you use it for medicinal purposes, remember the flexibility and usually the madhahibs will kick in, because there's a difference between haja and you styling yourself or something.
Right.
So there's a huge difference. Ad-dam was-sadid yu'afa an yasir. Ad-dam, generally, as I mentioned, even the dam of the blood of the humans would be considered impure, and sadid is pus. So anytime you have non-stop bleeding, it is a najasa. It is an, so obviously you want to wash it, and obviously pus, anything so small cuts is always overlooked. The other one is medhi and mani. So medhi is basically not the white liquid at the time of the exit, but the what is the right word? Like the sexual fluid, the pre, that would be considered impure. But the other one, the white liquid itself, would be considered it's pure. And this obviously is an ikhtilaf among the scholars. Aisha radiallahu anha, this is one of her positions. This is also the position of the Hanbali madhab, that the white liquid itself is not pure. Because all of us, we go back to that liquid by the end of the day. That's like saying we are impure. But there is a narration where Aisha radiallahu anha just scratched it off from the Prophet's clothes. That's why a lot of the scholars took this position that mani, which is the white liquid, is not impure, but medhi, the pre-liquid that comes before mani, is considered impure. Al-wadi is any sort of liquid after urination, or sometimes people have the secretion when they're tired. All of those liquids that comes from the exit generally is impure.
You're saying many is not impure?
Not many. Wadi. This one, the last one. The thick liquids segregated after urination, or even if, let's say, if you're tired, you could have that liquid that comes out of the exit.
Okay, to recap it, can you recap the three?
So one is many.
Right,
that would be pure. That's the final liquid that comes out.
Okay.
And then there's medhi, that is the pre. Let's say if somebody's having some sort of sexual desire, in that case, that it would be considered impure. If it's on your clothes or anything, you have to wash it.
We generally go with color. If it's
Yeah.
thick and white, that would be the money, but nothing is the transparent.
Transparent liquid, yes. Wadi is like not just I guess the liquid after urination, but you can even add when somebody's tired. Also, they have certain secretions. So in that, all of those things would be considered impure. You have to wash it. So this is all najasat. I know this topic is a little challenging, not the most entertaining. Al-mazal bihi. This is a Hanbali position. I'll explain this in detail. So there is one hadith that the scholars follow, or the Hanbali scholars, the Mu'tamad, what they follow is, it talks about having 7 wash. How would you define 7 wash in the Mu'tamad? Is basically, let's say you have something on your clothes, impure, something impure. You put water, squeeze it out, that would be considered 1 wash. So let's say you have something on your clothes, it's sticking. You wash it and you have to squeeze the water out, that would be considered 1 wash. So the relied opinion is 7 washes. I mean, I've asked multiple scholars who focus on checking the authenticity of the narration. This narration itself is considered weak even by my teacher, and generally the scholars consider the 7 wash as a weak narration. So what is important is izalatul najas. Removing the impurity should be, i.e., top priority. So let's say even if there's after 7 washes you still see the impurity, you still have the obligation to remove it. So let's say I know some will tell you 3 minimum, until 3 is like you have yaqeen that this thing is gone. But the goal is generally, I did ask Dr. Hatem about this also. He said you're allowed to do 1 also, as long as you are sure that you have washed the impurity from your clothes. So this has to be top priority.
Even in the case of a dog licking.
No, not dog lick. We're talking about just an impurity on the cloth. So let's say blood is on your cloth, or let's say you have some pus on your.
I mean, like,
Not dog. Clearly, it is the hadith itself indicates about
right.
7.
So that's what the first one said, the doctor colored what it things he says both
Yeah.
dark and complete.
Oh,
I can't just leave the blood to dry. I have to.
This one.
You have to wash it.
The first category,
Right.
both of those two.
That's why they say that many is not impure, because it was dried and was fine.
No, many in general is considered pure. Many, because all of us, we all go back to that drop of fluid.
Yes.
So, and obviously the narration itself did not indicate the Prophet ﷺ actually washed, because Aisha radiallahu anha was just scratching it off.
Right.
Yeah, and then she came. So that is one. So 7 washes. If you're, I know expressing in this country, it's very difficult. So make sure you're removing the najasa from your clothes. Draining the clothes is one of the positions that the Hanbali like to follow. I.e., even if you wash it, squeezing it out basically. So you know in that way it's out from your clothes.
It is not the case for the others.
I haven't found any comment. I have to check because I was trying to read some of the commentary from because Dr. Haddam, he likes to give you commentary from the other ones. So if it's so one is on the cloth and one is on the floor. On the floor, as long as you sprinkle water in general, you're done. So that will take care. I want to just check in the other madhab how they would consider, because I couldn't find any commentary on squeezing the water out in the other position.
Yeah, because then I'm just wondering, like, what would be the separation between the washes, right? Because you will just be confused.
Yeah. I mean, I personally don't I mean, I do squeeze it out, but this is more like, this is what I've studied. I don't know if I would enforce this position, but the water is squeezed out in general.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So it is water in a washing machine, water is filled and it's dropped out, it's filled again, dropped out. So just hypothetically, if you're, let's say you were to follow the Hanbali position, hypothetically. So if you're to wash, you know, you yeah. So this narration itself, a lot of the scholars don't consider this a strong hadith. But remember, the goal is zaratun najis. It has to be removing the impurity from your clothes.
And he's making it as well.
I mean, if you have impurity on your clothes, it's just on the clothes, remember.
But it touches you.
No, if an impurity, if let's say something falls on your hand and it's impure, you'll just wash it and then just move on. Wudu is something you have to have nullifiers of wudu. So if something impure falls on your hand, you won't do wudu again. You have to break your wudu for you to do wudu again if you want to do wudu again.
So like that would not require it.
Oh, you're talking about like that comes out of your body? Yes, obviously in that case, yes.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about something falling on your hand.
Okay. So
Dog saliva does not come out of your body.
Yeah, let's say a dog licks you, you'll wash it 7 times, but a wudu itself is not required because
Licks my hand.
you'll just wash it this 7 plus 1.
Oh, so I would do.
You should have wudu.
Five.
You are in a state of it's like you don't need to do wudu again because that is najasa on your hand, but you haven't broken your wudu, if that makes sense.
You have to go back to the muqallat of
Yeah.
wudu, go back to that.
That slide will help you. Something that nullifies your wudu is what will make you will require you to do wudu again. Mubtalat. So anything from the 2 exits, extensive bleeding, extensive front pus, deep sleep, all of that is basically nullifiers of wudu. In that case, you have to go to wudu again.
How do you find extensive beauty? So, for example, if let's say you have a cut and start to flow, then you consider that extensive, or
I mean,
is it?
usually the Hanbalis like to always go with urf, it's like customary. Like, what would you consider extensive bleeding? A cut. By the way, I remember I had a cut, small cut, and I was like, I'm not going to do wudu for this. So if you want to be really strict with yourself, you can go do wudu out of ihtiyat, but a small cut, I think most of us, I can open a door and I can end up having a small cut. So
Right.
you want to be. So I'm saying, but when somebody looks at you, when they tell you this is a lot of bleeding, and at this point of time, this is accepted generally by people as extensive bleeding. But a small cut, I mean, I get small cuts all the time. I pull a chair, then I realize I've cut my.
No, but you cut and then you have to feel like it might dry it up, or if you touch it with like let's say a towel paper or something like this, it's all become red. But it's still a small cut.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't, when I see small cuts, I just continue praying. Because even if you wash the small cut, the blood still.
It's still right.
So let's say you have it on your clothes, you may want to,
Yeah, that's right.
you want to wash it out. That's where you have to be a little bit more careful.
Yeah.
So there's strictness when it comes to having najas on your clothes. That is where it gets a little more strict.
touching a dead body, you do wudu.
No, I said al-mayyit illa mastathna is except Bani Adam.
All except it is. I thought you meant like actually son of Adam, not.
No, except son of Adam.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So just to remind, Nawafil wudu are just those things.
I thought like a week or two ago, we said that if you clean the body, but then,
You will have to do wudu
right,
for the one who touched it. You're talking about wait, what is this for? Najasa, this topic is.
That's what that's for.
So this is najas. So generally, when if somebody does the washer itself will have to do wudu again, but it's not the dead body is not considered najasa.
So if you have, let's say, take the example of a cow, that, and, you know, it has species or whatever, it's
That's
still,
fine.
no problem, right? But let's say it's dead,
yes.
and it happens, the species touching, then in that case, it's just.
It's a dead anything that is dead would be considered najasa. But a son of Adam is not considered dead. But if you wash him,
You'll raise it up, the exceptions are in that green box.
oh, the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, Adami, so humans, what has no flowing but dead, I mean, obviously anything from the seas to it's pure, unless you are following the Hanafi fiqh. Usually they're strict on certain animals, certain, I don't want to say fishes. I think the Malikis don't consider the snails and
Yeah, shells. And
those kind of things. There's another one, yeah. But usually the Hanbalis are, it's a good amount of scholars, anything that's from the sea, you eat.
So, Hanafi is the lobsters and crab. And
They consider it makruh.
yeah,
Usually.
makruh.
They won't say it's haram.
And it doesn't.
No.
The ayah that talks about it, it just talks about.
Yeah,
food from
the
Who
sea.
says it's not fruit?
The Hanafis on the crab,
Oh, and not even haram.
lobster. No,
No, just makruh, just anything with the shell and bottom fever.
just the last part, inshallah. So how would you typically wash with water? Bilma bidun at-turab, except in the case of dog. Yes.
So just going back to the sea. So like whales and, sharks and those are.
Whales, there is a narration that the companions themselves, I think one of they ate a whale. There's a narration. So the whale was actually on the sea. So they were lost. Like maybe the next time I'll bring the narration. They were lost and they didn't know what to do. They reached the edge of the sea and they saw a huge whale. Yeah, a dead whale. But I mean, anything from the sea is it had washed up. So they ate and they stayed there for like a long time. In fact, they gain weight. The hadith talks about them gaining weight also. Maybe I'll bring the hadith next time. It's a long hadith. And the Prophet also, they told him, and he's like, they carried some more meat with them and they gave it to the Prophet also. So the whales we know for sure it's okay. The sharks, I have to check the commentary because there are plenty of humans who eat sharks. I don't know if there's anything prohibited. Usually in the sea, you would not find prohibition because that's a very strong word where there's no narration. Because generally,
The strict ruling is if it doesn't have scales on it. Like they say, don't eat those.
Yeah.
fish. But that's like, that would be tuna, if it even doesn't have catfish.
yeah,
I'm just wondering, like, like lions, right?
Lions are
right?
they have the teeth.
Yeah, so like shark, if you look at it, right? So it doesn't fall in the sea category.
But
I've-
remember, in the sea,
Everything in the
little
sea.
fish is eating the bigger fish is the little one. It just there's a big cycle.
Yeah. I mean, usually the ayah itself talks about things in the sea being halal. So there is no clear-cut prohibition. That's why even the strict positions are like it'll go down to makruh.
In terms of animals on land.
So if there's an animal that's hunting on land, crocodile is a good example, it's prohibited.
Any carnivore, better or.
And hyena is where the ikhtilaf is, but anything though that has those teeth, you don't eat them generally.
One time I was offered bear, but I wasn't sure.
Okay, so what?
Bear
Probably rough.
came onto somebody's property in Pennsylvania. So I'm like, oh, no, this thing.
Okay, bilma budun at-turab. Here they play 9 or 9:15? 9:15, right? Because here I've noticed, mashallah, they change the time real quick.
Yeah.
Bilma bidun turab. So anytime you have all these impurities, you'll wash it with water. So there is one narration where if it is a male baby not eating solids yet, you just have to sprinkle water. You don't have to wash it. But if it's a girl, this is also based on a narration, you will wash it. So if a male who doesn't eat solid, i.e. a baby who doesn't eat solid, is not eating solids yet, and if you urinated on you, you'll only sprinkle water. But a female baby, you'll wash it. They use it based off a narration. No, we do not. I personally do not know what's the differentiation, but that's based off the narration itself.
7 or 7.
Depends on what you would consider, wash. Remember, I mentioned there's a ikhtilaf the hadith sahih. So if you remember, the goal always is izalatun najis, removing the impurity, and once you're sure, either at 5 or 2 or 6, that's when you'll stop.
So when you say narration, there is a hadith report.
There is a narration. The ikhtilaf is it sahih when it comes to the 7 washes.
No, not
That is of a narration, where he sprinkles water when a boy had actually urinated on him. Yeah. The ghasl wahid, this goes back to the urination of the Bedouin and the Arabi, actually urinated in the masjid, and obviously people were calling him out, and he told them, let him be, and as soon as he left, he told, just spray water on this area. This is a narration that they use. So when it comes to anything on earth, you spray water just one time is good enough. And anything other than that, obviously this is a position of the Hanbalis, is 7 washes. But remember, except for dog, there's flexibility on the other washes. We mentioned when it comes to wiping with stones or toilet paper, 3 is the bare minimum. You don't need a niyyah to wash your najasa. Like, you don't have to have a niyyah, I'm washing from blood or nothing. You just wash, you're done. Like rain can wash your najasa and you're good to go. So it's not a requirement for you to have an intention that you're going to wash. I'm sure this was not an easy, it was a lot of detail, but so I'm not going to take anything new, but I'll just see.
Just remember, like 5 different, right? So you got the splashing, 1 wash, 7 washes without dirt, 7 washes with dirt. Those are all, but it's all, it's all related there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend just reviewing the slides. It just helps you like navigate it. Consider this like a map. It is not going to the problem is when we throw hundreds of narration. I mean, this itself is difficult enough for most people. So when you throw in hundreds of narration with this explanation, it's very difficult. And it's not this you can download, you can have it on your phone. Anytime you have any doubt, just review it. This one? Basically anything on the floor.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So that's basically the narration. This is a well-known hadith that the Bedouin man had come and urinated in the Masjid of the Prophet and he was asked to just throw water on it. So let me ask you guys this. Let's see how well everybody is remembering. I forgot to say Bismillah, and then I've already started washing my face. Is it an obligation for me to start again? Okay, alhamdulillah. Let's say I forgot to if you're a Hanbali now, you forgot to rinse your nose, and you went straight to washing your face. What would you do? Then you do your face again. Yes. Okay, alhamdulillah, is good. So, what is awrah for a man and what is awrah for a woman? Hanbali, let's say Hanbali. Let's say in Salah. Salah, I think that everybody agrees.
Navel to belly button to top of knee, not including the knee.
Okay.
Right.
The shoulders, if you're able to cover.
That's not. Is that awrah?
They would consider, Imam Ahmad would consider that awrah if you're able to cover it. But what is agreed upon between the madhahib is not including the navel, anything obviously below. The Hanafis will include the knees. So navel to knees is agreed upon. The added is just the shoulder or the knees, depending on which position.
Extend it like this.
A little bit more, basically.
They take the belly button and they go below.
Yeah.
Everybody else. This is good right here.
I mean, if you're usually in you're doing a Hajj or Umrah, most people wear it above the navel line.
Yeah.
When you cover your shoulders, pretty much everything else is covered anyway. That's
Yeah.
how it works usually.
So I haven't seen too many people. mean, there, then let me go and not go into the other ones. The other one I want to ask you guys is, let me give you scenarios. So let's say you get up from your sleep. What are you supposed to do as a Hanbali physician?
Wash your hands right
Okay, Hanbali.
If you're making wudu.
Yeah, if you're making wudu. Yes. Okay, and the other one is miftah salat. So we talked about is pus considered impure?
Yeah, but not small.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. I think you guys did pretty good. I want to see how you guys do in Salah actually. What I think this is all for females. Something you may have to review. Okay, what about camel meat?
I will do that.
No, Hanbali position. Yes. Okay, and what about the other madhab?
You don't need to make wudu.
Okay, this is purely a Hanbali position. Okay, do you have to have wudu for tawaf? Okay, what about reciting the Quran?
Yes.
Exciting, but
Yes.
top of your head.
Hanbali position, right?
Reciting the Quran, you don't have to have wudu. Let's say if we start reciting, but touching the mushaf, yeah, yeah, touching the mushaf, yes.
I don't know why, but I walked away the other class thinking that you had to have wudu. It's like.
No.
Someone who believes that, does anyone believe that?
Unless you are in a state of menstruation, then, or if you're in a state of major impurity. Major impurity is that's where things get more strict,
Major, not minor.
not minor.
That wouldn't be, and wudu, right, that you would have. to do.
Ghusl itself. I mean, he's talking about just reciting the Quran itself. Okay, so if you don't have water and it's in the next gas station, would you do tayammum?
Basically, never if I am.
You know, actually, yeah, I was actually playing soccer with my friends on Sunday, and then I had my wudu with some people today. He's like, "Let's do tayammum." I'm like, no. You're not making tayammum. We have water bottles in the car. We can drive somewhere. There's a bathroom in the park. Like,
Yeah.
we're not doing it.
See, this is, people come. I mean, the reason why I gave that scenario is because I saw it happen. I mean, there was I think it was a Pathan, this was in the Middle East. One of the brother, the bathroom for some reason didn't have water. And I wanted to do wudu. There was a cafeteria right there. I was like, I'm just gonna go to the cafeteria. I don't care what they have to look at me here. And then he's like, oh, just do tayammum because it was just no, it's a desert there, right? He's like, just do tayammum, and I was like, there's a tap water right there. So it's not an option. Remember, walam tajidu ma, that you don't find water. فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. The ayah itself, if you don't find water, so you have to put in your effort, exhaust your resources, then you'll put your so camping might be.
It's like an end in 5 minutes. That excuse to be like, okay, stay in real quick.
Adhan is in 5 minutes.
For next, like that, like you got a house there, better than 5.
Yeah, so you're talking about a very, very unique situation
Right,
where
yeah.
there's you're running out of options. Yeah, yes. That's not the norm though, typically.
So 5 minutes left. You have water available, but it's gonna take time.
No, I didn't.
No, if you have water available, then
water, you don't.
You don't have water.
yeah.
Or maybe it takes you 20 minutes to go to the gas station.
No,
So what were you doing
wake
for all
up at like 5 minutes before that? No, you go do wudu.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, generally, if you have access to water, you go do water. So you need to exhaust your resources, and then only you will. That means like there's no water, then you do time.
So you can save time by not doing tea time.
Sorry.
So hopefully, so inshallah, let me know, and I'll stop the recording. Jazakallah khair, brother Muslim. Let me know if you guys wanna take.